community legends take great pleasure in documenting the life story of this true legend. The name John Arnold is well known in the entertainment and performing arts locally and internationally. He was born John Emmanuel Julian Arnold on the 9th February 1958 in the village of Bethel, Tobago. He attended the Montgomery Primary and Scarborough Methodist Primary School, then to Bishop's High School, later to the Polytechnic Institute in Trinidad.
Well, yeah, my childhood was an exciting childhood. I grew up in Bethel. My mom is a pilot. So I grew up in Bethel Village. My grandfather, John Pickett, he had a cocoa estate. So my mother has a large family, well, a number of sisters and one brother. But we grew up as an extended family. My mother was away for several years pursuing nursing. So we all grew up, and my father used to visit us in Bethel. He lived in Scarborough. And I remember the days when we used to get one sweetie would last you all week. We used to take a piece, fold it back in the paper. And we grew up as a very loving family, actually. Me and my sister, along with all our cousins, lived with our grandparents. In those days, we used to do all the things that you can think of. The grind mill for corn, dancing the cocoa, going for water down by the river.
This living icon remembers his school days quite vividly.
Montgomery School, when you were going to school, if at the top of the hill you saw the flag up, you know you were going to get licked. So Mr. John used to be there waiting for you. So your race was really in the morning between doing your chores and trying to get to school early so you don't get licked.
Hurricane Flora devastated Tobago in 1963. John Arnold recalls where he had to seek refuge.
Fondly, and I also remember Hurricane Flora and all the beautiful coconut water we drank that fell on the streets and so on. So I remember also, as we're talking, it's all coming back, all the houses broke down. But Deborah Morbiggins, they had a kitchen. And the kitchen stood up where the houses, the roofs left. And what happened was that kitchen held so many people that night. I mean, it was just amazing. So I remember those are some fun memories of childhood. And I moved to town when I was about 7.
Move to Scarborough for young John Arnold had its advantages.
7, 8, thereout. My father got married to my mom. And then I came into Scarborough to live in Rockleyville. Another very exciting time too. On that street, they had a number of real key people. Ivor Archie lived on that street, the Wheelers, the Thompsons, the Spicers. And it was a very communal place. I remember that for sure. Riding bike, Mrs. Archie, we used to go there for lessons, I remember that. And I also used to walk to music lessons by my aunt, Eunice Elliott, who was actually very responsible for my early start in music. Mrs. Archie taught me extra classes for common entrance at that time. But I'm just saying that during that time, everybody on that street, I mean, all the kids were all going out to play music. They were all going to music lessons. Ivor, myself, everybody on that street. And it was also a time of sport. I was very much into basketball and cricket. My mom bought all the cricket gear because she was also an avid player too, as a woman cricketer. So, and then she came back, she got married, and again, a good childhood. I mean, lots of mangoes. Myself and Desmond Parker, we used to give a Tarzan call every morning to wake each other up. And then we go, I used to do a kind of whistle. I can't do it anymore. but Desmond, he would come out and then, we used to do things like, my mom made sure we had areas of responsibility.
You would think that life in Scarborough for young John Arnold meant that responsibility of raising animals was not a part of his upbringing. Think again.
We had ducks, we had chicken, I had a sheep. I remember one time, one of the sheep I had a breech, and we had to call up Mr. Armstrong, who was a well-known, unofficial vet, but he knew how to deal with that. And we got the lamb, but the sheep died. And we had to now feed the sheep with, feed the lamb with milk and so on. So I had that. We used to go out and tie the sheep. I used to deal with fowls. I had to go and deal with the eggs. We had to find a place. And I will tell you something, those things really augured well.
Primary school days for John Arnold started in Bethel and ended in Scarborough. From there, he attended Bishop's High School.
After I left Montgomery, I came to Scarborough. I was going to Scarborough Methodist. And the big teacher there for common entrance was Mr. James Ewing. I think you know, he's well known for the kind of licks he used to give. And, but it augured well, as I said, because we all turned out really great citizens, I think. And after Methodist, in those days it was very competitive. You only had Bishops, Roxborough Sec, and Scarborough Sec. When you passed with Bishops was a big thing, you know. And so when your name came out in the papers, a lot of celebration. Went to Bishops, and another great exciting time too. In my first 3 years, I was really bad. I was a bad boy, yeah. I was, and I used to be in the cadets. I was key in the cadets. I joined the band. I used to create beats and all that. All my reports were always drumming on the desk. So I was always into, you know, creating a lot of noise in class. And then by Form 3, I went through a religious change where, again, I have to connect this because my mom brought me up. She was very key about music. She spent about maybe $5,000 to get a piano for us when we were young.
This bad boy at Bishop's High School came from a musical background and was destined for greatness. It is often said that one's future is determined from young. The biggest slice of the John Arnold story has to do with music, even if we knew his mother introduced him to the piano very young in his life.
And she was adamant about this piano being used only for the Lord. So in my earlies, I had to play in a lot of churches. I knew hymns, I mean, like off my tip. You know, I'll go to church, and they just call the number, the number of the song, and I will know it's Blessed Assurance. I just started playing. So, and I played in several churches, both here and in Trinidad. I played in a lot of weddings during that time. My mom really had us with that. I also had Miss Enola Arnold teach me music after Miss Elliott.
That was just a sneak peek into the specific area of expertise of this musical giant. Later on in this legend story, we will get back into the musical journey. As for now, we go further into his time at Bishop's High School.
What was significant about Bishops was that I think Bishops tuned you for life. I was involved in several things, and ISCF, I was involved in cadets. I was really strong in cadets. And I remember once getting some licks from the actual battalion because we had a mock battle, and I lost a rifle bolt in the mock battle. And people like Christo Giff, Stefan Giff, all of them were involved in making sure one of these. I mean, after the 20th man hit you on your bottom, you wasn't feeling anybody else, you know. It was purely numb.
That was high school and secondary education for John Arnold. He now takes us to Polytech Institute. That's where he studied zoology and botany. For those of you hearing these terms for the first time, let me now explain what these terms mean. Zoology is the study of applied science of disturbing animals and their habitat. As for botany, the study of physiology, structure, genetics, ecology, and plant life of a particular region, habitat, or geological period, he explains.
So from Bishops, I left Bishops, I went to Sixth Form Secondary, Polytechnic Institute in Trinidad, another great 2 years. This school didn't have any uniform. I was staying with a pastor and his wife in Woodbrook, so I used to walk to St. James. I mean, in those days, there was no real crime to talk about, but really, really exciting times. I remember going to that school. By the time I got to 6A, I was doing zoology, geology, and botany. And I was so good in zoology in one of the things called displaying the cranial nerves of a shark head. Because every weekend, the pastor and his wife used to bring a shark head from the market. So I used to practice so I was really, really good at it. I remember the lecturer, used to leave me to teach the 6B students by the time I was in 6A, because I was really, really good at that. I mean, I was good at that. I was good at opening cockroaches, displaying, same thing with rat. I was a boss at rat. And I could display all the stuff in a rat and talk about all the internet. No, zoology. Yeah, I was solid in zoology. Actually, I got an A in zoology when I did A-levels. So I had a part where I wanted to be a doctor, actually. And so I was going down that path. And then when I left there, I came back to Tobago. And then I went into work.
The world of work for John Arnold started at?
My first job was actually a teacher at convent. I actually had a guy recently tell me, a police, you taught me in school. And I said, you're right. When I was in convent, I had this very enviable position that I was the only teacher teaching every single student from first form to fifth form. So I've really taught a lot of people during that time. I taught it for about a year and a half under Sister Mary. Another great time for my learning. You know what? My salary during that time was $300 a month. And now I look back and I'm like, how did we make it? But going to dinner was just about $25, $30 during that time. So after convent, I went to the library as a library assistant. That was fundamental to my understanding the power of reading. I covered up so much during that year. And then I went into UE. After UE, I came to Signal Hill.
The Signal Hill Comprehensive School at that time was the leading secondary school in football intercol in the country. With John Arnold joining the teaching staff, it only helps to lift the standard of that school.
Well, yeah, I mean, during that, when I got to Signal Hill, I was Energy Plus. And I remember a good old teacher, Phil Smith, saying to me, partners, it's just a matter of time before you will realize that you have to chill. It took me a while because I was always energetic, and when I got there, I got involved in basketball, I got involved in music. And immediately I got there, the first thing that came up was the music festival, because you had the junior secondary students coming up. And at that time, myself, Mike Duncan, Cheryl Duncan, we all had a discussion about how we can move and create a group at Signal Hill. So in 1982, that first music festival that we really were highly successful at, coming out of that in 1984, the decision was made to create the Signal Hill Alumni Choir.
The speciality of this individual presence contributed to the transformation of the institution. So in 1984, the Signal Hill Alumni Choir was established. Before we get into the world of the renowned alumni choir, so in 1984, the Signal Hill Alumni Choir was established. Before we get into the world of the renowned Signal Hill Alumni Choir, let's look at his role as teacher.
When I started at Signal Hill, I was teaching biology, I was teaching business and accounting. Now, at that time, the biology teacher had left, and they needed a biology teacher. But remember, when I went to UE, I moved from sciences to social sciences, right? I did industrial management, which was more business, marketing, accounting. So when I came out, what I was supposed to be teaching was business and accounting. And what I did was that because there was a gap, there was nobody teaching biology. I taught that for 1 year until they got a biology teacher. I love biology, by the way. I love to teach biology. I love it. Setting that up, those were the early days of principles of accounts, principles of business. I also taught at YTEP and some of the other short-term programs. I even found myself teaching teachers, during that time. But as I said, that was early days of the development of the business program at that time. So I came in that time when everything was being ushered. I could talk about the fact that one could have seen after 2000, or maybe just after 1998, there was a sudden decline in how the schools function. As a matter of fact, when that thing came out about teachers not being able to beat children, I mean, I have absolutely no doubt. I think that's the decline of discipline in schools. I think that's when it, and I saw it so fast that by 2002, I was ready to leave.
All teachers in the secondary educational system relies on a strong disciplinary structure for the stability of the institution. John Arnold gives his stance on the experiences on discipline at Signal Hill.
Well, I mean, I was one of those highly respected because I was actually one of the deans of discipline along with Mr. Darrenberg. And I mean, I think the two of us were known to be corridor people. The key to that was always consistency. You can't tell a child get off the corridor one day and tomorrow you pass them. So I knew that even when my car came in, the word used to go out, Arnold reach. And once you say Arnold reach, the corridor clears. And I mean, looking back, there were several examples. I know of examples when even your whole approach to a student had to be a violent one. I know of times when you had to, you enter a room, two people are fighting, they look, they see you, and they continue. And you actually have to do a double kick between them to part them. I know of instances where I took off my belt and beat students, you know what I mean? And to be quite honest, there's some students were never students. They were bad. I mean, they were wasting time on the campus. And I also know of cases where I know of two guys from Castara, where their father, they were doing just bad, but they all they wanted to do was fish. And we call in the father and we say, hey dad, these guys want to fish, they want a boat. And he took them out in Fort Fun. And those guys, as a matter of fact, I met one in the bank recently, and he was going to deposit. He said, man, we love it, man. We go out in the boat, come in Castara Bay, and we just hang out, eat with fish. That's what they want, So again, I think it's critical. Now I think the way education is, I think there's a bigger appreciation of the arts, of technical, vocational stuff that kids don't have to grow up thinking that, hey, you have to be a doctor and a lawyer. I think there's a bigger appreciation now. But in terms of discipline, I mean, I could tell you even now, today I'm going to start working with some graduates for graduation. So I go back. Last year I went back, and children are like everything else. You've got to set the parameters. You've got to decide where the respect is. I respect you, you respect me, and you be consistent.
This is the part of the story which takes the spotlight. The John Arnold story and his contribution to Tobago has to do largely with the Signal Hill Alumni Choir.
Signal Hill Alumni started in 1984. This was a combined effort of myself, Mike Duncan, Cheryl Duncan, Royal Carrington. So during that time, they stayed with us until about maybe 1994, somewhere around that. Of course, we did a tour during that time to Venezuela under N.R. Robinson, and then I think they left to go on their other paths. They moved on. My vision for the group was quite different. I thought that the group needed to be a solid group in terms of repertoire and moving and so on. But they made that decision to move on, and they formed another group, whereas I continued with the group and took it in a completely different direction. We moved away from folk. We started doing other kinds of music. And my thing was always to create an iconic show choir in Tobago that was not only addressing the music that we know, but also other types of music. So now we can boast that we do African stuff, gospel, we do jazz, we do reggae, we do calypso, but our fundamental premise is that we want to preserve the folk and calypso and soca music of Trinidad and Tobago. We think it's important that 200 years from now, that we have documented some of that work that has been created by the masters.
The Signal Hill Alumni Choir have been 34 years in existence from 1984 to date. 34 years is a very long time for any group or organization to survive in Tobago. Everyone wonders, what is the secret to the survival?
It is done in a choral fashion, because I think that's where you get to see the beauty of harmony rather than the melody itself. So that's what I've kind of spent the last 10, 12 years doing. And we've been documenting that, I mean, in a powerful way. We took part in the music festival successfully until 1990, when they introduced the category called Calypso Choral. And we were the first group to win that category. After that, we stopped all music festival. And then I moved on to another choir coming out of Signal Hill called the Signal Light Choral. As a matter of fact, one year, we were so good, we formed the Signal Light, and then we formed Signalettes, which was a junior under, like 13 and under. And Signalettes, Signal Lights, I mean, just blew the place apart, you know, one music festival. We were that good at that time, you know.
There are choir masters and their masters. This week's community giant is a musical genius. Not only as a musical director of the world-renowned Signal Hill Choir, he also introduced a young arm of the alumni. This choir is one of the longest living groups existing in Tobago. John speaks of some of the foundation members.
One of the key persons in the group would be the choreographer, Miss Georgina Peterkin, Judge. I think Judge is probably the only person that I know that has been able to choreograph understanding the message of what is being sung.
I'm Georgina Peterkin. I have been with Signal Hill Alumni Choir from inception, which is like about 1982, 1984. The choir started off basically as a folk choir coming out of Signal Hill Comprehensive, as we used to call it before. And so we went on to the music festivals, dominating the festivals, and just basically dominating music festivals for the 80s and the 90s. So I have been around John from since then till now. I am now the choreographer, but at that time in the early 80s we had Mrs. Duncan. She was the choreographer. So I learned my style and choreography from Vanilla Allen from Scarborough Sec and Miss Duncan. So I was able to carry on their dreams with the choir as to what they think or what they hope the choir would be. And that's where my journey started with John.
Her movements are subtle, but they amplify, they're not meaningless, right? So I've worked with several choreographers, and some people are just dance movements to go to music. She interprets, you know, it's the moon, you know, it's the rain, you know, it's power, you know, it's, you know, oppression, you know. She made sure that the moves suit that. And what we have, I would also give pay tribute to Neve, who is also good, has a beautiful eye for design in terms of decor and also uniform. Neve Mackenzie. We've had some key people over the years that have, for example, she's just been there for all the years. We used to have a girl called Martha Balfour. She's now left, but she was also in the early times. We now have also another senior person, Maria Rodriguez-Jack. She's still there from the early crowd. And then we've had the second incarnation. And then, by the way, you must note that Signal Hill has evolved. It's no longer just Signal Hill graduates or people. It's now a movement that now has people from all different backgrounds. It doesn't matter. As long as you love to sing and you love the style. I've even taken that one innovative step further now, where we now have a choir in Trinidad.
This point is where the intrigue steps in. So we understand the young arm of the evolution of the organization. How do you integrate a Trinidad arm? And how does it work?
And the way we have done that is very simple. It's a model I'm working on called the community fire. It's about talking about it next week at a conference. The basic premise is we use technology, and what we did was there are a number of persons who pass through Signal Hill who live in Trinidad who want to sing. And then there are a lot of other people who want to sing in that style. So what they did is we come together and we said, all right, we use WhatsApp. So we tape all the parts in Tobago, we tape the movements, and we send them by WhatsApp to them. I go down once a week, I meet with them, and we go through the parts, we bring them together, and then what we did for the last 3 concerts was that we actually merged them together, and then it's amazing what the magic does, right? But you get a different energy here supporting this, and it's that, that coalesce that, and I'm actually thinking of that as a concept, a model that we can do even here in Tobago, that we can use technology to do that and strengthen communities.
This phenomenal group have traveled extensively across the world during their 34 years of existence.
Yeah, well, we've participated in several choral festivals, several. From Venezuela, Atlanta, New York, Geneva, France, Wales. Our most successful tour, I would think, would be Wales, where we came second in this massive world performing arts called the Eisteddfod. This is where over 160 countries go with choirs, and they compete. And in the very first year we went, we actually came second to Ukraine by 1 point. We still feel that we beat them that year, but they say nobody comes to Eisteddfod and wins in the first year. I mean, it just doesn't happen. But that I think from that we actually won the Group of the Year, the Express Group of the Year that year, 2001. We also had, well, before that we had the National Award in 1997, Hummingbird Gold. So that was also significant during that period. We have also traveled through the Caribbean, Barbados, Grenada, and I would say that another very successful one was performing in the United Nations building, the actual headquarters, in 2012 in New York and 2014 in Geneva, with several other countries for what was called Rhythms of the World.
There were other festivals.
Well, a number of the festivals are not competitive, they're just participatory. The last one we went was last year in Idaho, which is a festival which takes place every 3 years. You have to qualify for it. And it's funny, when we sent our videos and our bio, the people called us like the next day, hey, we need to have you. And I think it's very important to note what this choir has done for tourism. We in this country talk a lot, but we don't want to recognize some of these key things. I would say it very openly. I don't think there's any other export group out of Tobago that anybody, and I say this unashamedly, can say has that gravitas and energy and ambassadorial take like Signal Hill Alumni. I don't think there's any. I think we've been able to show that we can go to Trinidad and full Queen's Hall. I don't know of any other group that could do that.
This musical master, John Arnold's career started from childhood at home with mommy. His passion for music took him throughout the world. However, his greatest lesson in this art form took place at Berklee College for Music in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Right, so I mean, I started off early with Miss Elliott. That's my aunt, actually, my father's sister. And I learned, and during those days I did initial and grade 1 and grade 2 and so on and so on. But as I said, my mom was very strict about the fact that I had to play religious music. Unfortunately, this ear here was hearing things. So I would hear things on the radio and I started to pick it out. I remember when I went now from Miss Elliott to Miss Enola Arnold, she would tell everybody, don't you all follow that boy. She will drop me home every day, because we're family. Because I would hear things, I would hear all kinds of stuff, and I'd pick them out and play them. I always was playing by ear. So even though I was reading, on the other side I was also hearing. And she would tell the kids, no, don't follow him, But I used to show off the fact that I could hear and do what have you. And then, I mean, growing up, I did right up to grade 6 in theory, and Mrs. Armstrong also taught me. I keep forgetting that. She also taught me for some years as part of the influence. I think key to my musical development would be a man called the late Newman Alexander. I think he changed my life in 1981. Because what he showed me in 1981 is you were playing, but you didn't know what the hell was going on. And when I went to Berkeley, I did the summer program in Berkeley. My eyes just opened up. I realized that one of the key things is that you have to practice. Those Japanese will practice, I kid you not, from 6 in the morning to 12 in the night. And I remember, the way the piano rooms were, you had this little window so you could see the next piano room. And the way you did it was, when you went into Berkeley and you went into practice, come in the morning with your water, your juice, and you're just practicing all day. But you're really looking at the guy next door to see when he's taking a break, because you want to match him. And I would start 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm telling you, by 4 in the evening, I can't beat him. I can't make. I gotta stop. But it taught you the kind of discipline and the knowledge you got, and the experience of being thrown into what you call the bamboo. I mean, they just used to put you into a session and you got to play. You know what I mean? So I got a real good grounding in harmony, contemporary harmony, how you blend, how you create not just harmonies, but textures, which is so absent now. And that's something that, I'd really like to pass on, because it's not just about playing a chord, it's really about how you combine to get the kind of textures to get what you want to get. And that comes with some serious training.
Tune in next week for part 2 of John Arnold's story.